Hey, welcome to the webinar. My name is Shelley.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our first webinar.
Yeah, I know, we're on display tonight.
So we're excited. If we have any little tech issues, we do have our executive assistant, Glenn James.
Hello, everyone.
He's with us, hanging out in the background, getting us cups of tea and, just...
Go far.
Yeah, he's just helping out. So if we do have any issues as we go, be sure to know he will help us out. And we've been really looking forward to this time of hanging out and running through lots of questions. But before we do, let's talk about the agenda. So there's a couple of things we'll be covering. We're going to be talking about job opportunities and resumes, focusing on recruitment and the hidden job market, actually, which is one of Em's favourite topics.
I love that topic.
Yeah, and then we'll get into career development. We'll also talk about parental leave and having a baby and all that fun stuff, pay, changing careers, and we'll have a couple of polls that we do as well. And at the back end of tonight, we will have open Q&A, and so just make sure you can upvote, and we'll have space for live questions. Anything else, Em?
No, I think we'll find out, but I think you've covered everything that we know about so far.
Great.
Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the darkinjung people, traditional custodians of the land on which our studio sits, and pay respects to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us.
Great, so we've got a couple of recommendations we want to run through as well. So please make sure you're follow that. I thought this was a recommendation too. Anyway, here we go. First time doing this, as you can tell. Whatever we tell you tonight, just make sure, if we're talking about recruitment, that you always follow the application rules when applying for roles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Everything I say is true until the employer that you want tells you to do something different. Follow their lead on that.
Yeah, that's it. We really want you to be encouraged tonight, and we're going to keep it simple. Look for one thing that you can implement and take away from the webinar. So, yes, and make sure you upvote the questions.
Yeah, we will. So when we have the questions at the end, so the open Q&A, you'll actually be able to vote for the ones that you want us to answer. So keep an eye out.
And just one quick thing, the health insurance webinar is coming up, so if you're interested, make sure you register. You can find out more on the Facebook community.
Yeah, and up on the screen there you'll see Monday the 24th of August at 7:30 p.m. is where you'll find it.
Good times. So let's kick in. We will start off, Em. I think we're going to go straight into recruitment, talking about job opportunities. There was a lot of questions about that.
Or what about a poll?
Oh, yeah.
Straight up poll. Let's do it.
I'm glad you're here to help us.
Well, I live to give. Now, we're going to put up the first poll, and if I can just get everybody to raise their hand if they can hear the three of us loud and clear. Yeah, we've got some hands raised there. That's awesome. And we've got the poll. Where is your nearest capital city? And we usually let the polls go for about 30 seconds, so another 15 seconds.
So if you could just do a dance, Shell.
I would like to do some elevator music, like...
No, that was at the pre-roll.
Oh, okay, no worries. Okay, obviously not allowed to do elevator music.
Sorry, I'm still dying, everyone. Okay, we're going to end the poll now, and I'm going to share the results on your screen. And for Shell and Em's benefit, 30% of people watching are in Sydney, 47 from Melbourne. Probably not much to do in Melbourne on a Monday night. We're thinking of you. 16% in Brisbane, and the rest scattered around Australia. And while I've got everybody, before we get into the career growth and development part, let's go to another poll. Where are you at on your career journey? And there was a question. Is John Pigeon there? No, he's not.
Oh, we miss John.
The one thing that could make this better.
Yeah, would be John.
All right, I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share everyone with the results. Okay, where are you at on your career journey? 12% are still studying, 6% in a grad position or an apprentice, 16% are full-time and happy. And this is very interesting, ladies. 38% full-time, but getting itchy feet.
Yeah, right.
38% of people are getting itchy feet. Wow. 13% full-time and need something new ASAP.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are stood down because of COVID, between jobs. So I might let you guys run your webinar and I'll interrupt again and we're going to do another poll.
Yeah, so it sounds like from the poll, there's a fair few people that are interested in maybe looking for new opportunities. And so I think kicking off with recruitment.
Good idea. I agree. It's interesting, 38% of people with itchy feet, that's not necessarily a negative. That tells me that we've got some people that are looking to push their career.
Yeah.
So whatever comes next, I dare say.
So we want to get through as many questions as we can so that we can help you to do that. That's really what we're here for tonight. And so glad to be hanging out. Em, let's kick it straight off. You talk a lot about the hidden job market, and one of the questions that we got submitted was, those jobs that you never hear about but they sound great, and I think it was a Cadbury.
Yeah, a food tech at Cadbury was the job that we're looking for.
That does sound great. Where are those jobs that sound awesome but you never kind of see advertised? Where are they? How do you find them?
I would suggest, here we have the question, where are they advertised? They're probably not advertised, or if they are, it's going to be so rare that I would encourage you to actually not play that game. So don't play the advertising game. Don't necessarily rely on waiting for those jobs to pop up on your Seek job alerts. Instead, what I'd be doing is tapping into the hidden job market, and this may take a little bit more time from finding the job. Well, I guess you've got to start earlier, right? So when you're looking for the job, it's not necessarily going to pop up on your screen. You've actually got to put in a bit more legwork. And so then what you need to do is actually go and map the market and do your research and find out where are the people who actually have these jobs or manage these jobs or are in HR where these jobs are available. And then I would actually start to reach out to those people. So it might feel a little bit cold, but there is a way that you can construct an email or you can construct a LinkedIn message that is flattering enough, is courteous enough, and does allow you to just say, hey, this is where I'm at in my career. I'm really looking to get the job you've got or to work in a team like yours. I would really love some pointers on where do I find them. So actually ask the people that are going to be have the jobs available. And maybe even if the vibe is right, ask them if you can buy them a coffee or you can have a coffee with them over Zoom. And you can pick their brain further. Now, the trick with that is some people think, I've got an hour every time someone asks me to pick their brain, what's in it for me? So you do really need to construct a pitch. That means that their time spent with you is going to be well spent. So I'd really encourage you to explore that.
What's in the pitch? Because I think I've had a couple of people lately reaching out to me about roles where I work and just saying, I'm interested, can you help me? Some people do it well, other people do it not that great. What would you put in your pitch if you're going to say a HR person or an organisation that you're interested in? What are you putting in that LinkedIn or that email? Or
I would really encourage you to have, actually, again, this is where it takes longer. You need to build a LinkedIn profile or a presence, maybe it's your resume if you're emailing, that steps you out ahead of the rest of the pack. Yeah. So there've got to be things that you're doing while you're studying or before you go looking for this job. I like to call them extracurriculars, and I know we will talk about them later, that mean that you're not just another grad with a degree. You've actually got more to offer, or you're not just someone that's had your 9-to-5 job and is now looking for the next thing. There's got to be more to when I get your LinkedIn message and you're saying, hey, would you have a coffee with me? I'm going to check out your LinkedIn profile. There's got to be more to you, more that value that you've got to offer. And then second thing that comes to mind for me is actually finding a way to capture your interest in that organisation specifically. So it can't be just about you getting the role. It needs to be about your burning desire to specifically work for that company.
And that goes to even if you're trying to connect with someone and you're building your network, look at their background, comment on their background and experience, say, I've seen you've done this thing, that relates to me in this way, make some kind of tangible connection that's personal to that person. So that'll be my recommendation. On to the next question because it relates. how do you write your resume when you are, and I guess for anyone with itchy feet out there right now, you're thinking of a new role, maybe you're thinking of changing careers, and you want to apply for a job, but you don't have that experience in that area.
Here you, again, need to focus on not following the traditional path. Don't rely specifically on job ad, resume, match, because they're not going to match. They're not going to match. So here I would encourage you to use the same techniques that we've just talked about, because it allows you to actually share your narrative and have somebody on the other end see more in you than just your experience.
Yeah.
But also we've talked about cover letters before.
The cover letters are key. If you don't have experience, your main point of selling you as the candidate is your cover letter. And when I say selling you, it's actually just as much about your pitch about why you love the business as it is about what you bring. So I would be absolutely researching the annual report, get on the website, get on the Instagram, get as much knowledge as you can about that business. Really emphasize that in your cover letter about why you care about the business and the role, and then what you bring in terms of who you are and what you value, because if you don't have that experience, that's okay, but just make sure you really leverage your cover letter as the opportunity to put yourself forward as a great candidate.
And when you are writing your resume, still look, even if it doesn't quite feel as strong or it feels like a bit of a stretch, do still look for opportunities to emphasize or prioritize anything transferable that you do have. So you still need that to do a little bit of lifting. It's just not going to do the heavy lifting for you in the same way it would if you had all the experience for the job you're applying for.
And I just think
And
now
we're warming up.
People seem to think that, I find this all the time, and people seem to think that everyone who's applying for the job meets all the selection criteria. But I think that is a really that can really hold you back from applying for the right roles. So just assume most people don't have everything on that selection criteria, because they don't. Like, how many people would you, like, I reckon it's like 1 out of 100 has all the criteria.
If that. So my rule of thumb is about the 70% mark. If you've got about the 70% mark as far as the experience they're asking for and the experience you've got, then apply. You've got to be in it to win it, and you don't know what your competition looks like. If you are applying for something where it's 50% or less, then you'll look a little bit silly and it will feel like you're wasting your time and the person reading that. But yeah, if you've got 70%, have a go. Why not? Now, you've got an interesting story for our next question, Shell. So I'll ask it, and then I might give sort of my first thoughts, but you can sort of then talk about your experience. So
I certainly can.
Oh, it's cringeworthy. I think you told me about this story one of the first times we ever met, and I'd forgotten about it until you brought it up again in preparation for today.
Great times.
So this is all about how to respond to curveball questions in an interview. So you're sitting in that interview, your resume's worked, or you found an opportunity through the hidden job market, and now you're there and you're asked a question that you weren't expecting. I think there's a couple of ways this can play out. I think one of the ways is you're asked a question and you don't have that previous experience to draw on, or you maybe weren't expecting it, but it's within the realm of experience that they're looking for this particular role. The other kind of curveball question that I would assume is out there is something that's maybe inappropriate.
Yes.
So if I focus on the former, which might give you a clue into what Shell will focus on with her story. So this idea of there's a question that comes up that's about experience. So it's an appropriate question. It just wasn't something you're expecting when you're prepping for this interview. Then my suggestion would be that you acknowledge that. So it might be something along the lines of, oh, that's a really interesting question, and you're buying yourself a little bit of time to think. I actually must admit I haven't directly had that experience before. It is part of the role that while I'm confident that I've ticked the criteria, that is in the job application or that we've talked about so far, this is probably one part of the role that I feel like I haven't had that practical experience before. What I am confident in though is that I've got these transferable skills, or I've got this transferable knowledge, and you would actually go into some detail about what those transferable skills or that transferable knowledge is. And then I would finish with, and based on that, if I was in this situation that you're asking me about, here's what I would do. So you're essentially turning it into sure, I can't talk specifically to a time in the past when I've done that, but I can absolutely demonstrate to you how I'm collecting the experiences that I have had and I'm turning them into my proposed way forward. And that's just as useful to the person on the other side of the table, I think.
Yeah, that's it. And it's being honest enough to go, I didn't expect it, haven't had that direct experience.
Yeah, but here's what, as I'm thinking about it on the spot, if I was faced with that situation, here's what I would do.
Totally.
But inappropriate questions is the other one.
I love a good inappropriate. I love a good inappropriate question in life, but not in an interview context.
No, I love inappropriate questions at interview on a one-off occasion when you've been in that situation, and then you can tell us a good story later.
Okay, so I forgot about this until we were talking about, we were reading through the questions that came through. So I was in an interview for a HR gig quite a while ago, and the role sounded great, sounded really good actually. And so I went out there for this interview, and in the conversation, the interviewer, the quite senior people who were on the panel, asked me a question, and actually a couple of inappropriate questions. It almost kind of got progressively worse as the interview went on, but it kind of came to a head when they asked me this question of, as part of the role, you'll be responsible for recruiting, but one of the things within this business is we don't like to recruit people from a certain ethnicity. And I was just sitting there like, oh my goodness, is this really happening? And I was like, because as a HR professional, one of the things that you are responsible for in the business is helping business leaders remove bias from decision making and recruitment. And so I was just like, I didn't know how to respond, because I'm thinking, this is completely unethical. Like, you're actually asking this role to bring bias and racist decision making into the recruitment process. I could not believe it. And so I just kind of sat there and didn't know how to respond. And in the end, I was like, I'm really sorry. I'm just really shocked by that question, and I don't really know how to respond. And so that was kind of at the back end of the interview, and the role was paid like double what I was earning at the time. It was huge money, but it was just such a good indicator, Em, of, okay, this is the culture that I would be working in. And so as I drove home from that interview, I was like, I'm so glad they asked that question.
And I can't help but think that if that's what they're willing to talk about in an interview, And so come back to exactly what you did. So in that moment, Curveball has hit and you felt quite shocked.
Yeah.
So how did you work out what to say? And can you just recap what you did say?
Well, at that point I realised there's not a chance I'm working here. Absolutely not. So was able to just kind of like, my care factor for the interview had gone by that point. So I was like, I'm really shocked. I'm not sure how to respond, and just left it at that, wrapped the interview up. But I say that story, and it's a terrible example of the types of inappropriate questions that come up in interviews. But those curveball questions give you an insight into the business you're working in. So use them to get your tells. If you do get inappropriate questions in interviews, like, are you pregnant? Do you have any medical or health issues? Make sure you're using that information to sense check, is this a business that I want to be in? Yeah.
And maybe if you are somebody that would like to take extra precautions in prepping for your interview, I hope this doesn't happen, but maybe have a one-liner up your sleeve that if you're ever faced with that situation, you do have something you can say, like, I wasn't expecting to receive that question. I'm not sure that it's something that I'm sort of willing to answer, or maybe there's a way that you can have a couple of lines that are in your words that feel right.
100%.
Okay.
So the next question we've got is, how short is too short to stay in a role?
Do you have an answer for this one?
I think it depends on what your previous employment history has been.
Okay.
Because I was looking at a resume the other day, and the person had worked for a long time, but every role was 18 months to 2 years, and that was a flag for me.
Yep, so there's a pattern emerging. I thought about it in a similar way. For me, let's assume this is a permanent role rather than a contract or a temporary role. So I'll just go on the premise that it's a permanent role. I would be looking for a minimum of a 12-month commitment, but I also made a mental note that can't become a pattern. That would be a one-off, or it might be something that if you've got, say 20 years or 15 years of your career so far, that might have happened a couple of times and you've got a good reason why. The only caveat I would add to that is if something, and this harps back a little bit to our question just prior, if something inappropriate occurs or perhaps something happens that just challenges or confronts your values so much that you can't sleep with that at night, in which case I would be comfortable to move on sooner.
Yeah.
But again, let's not make a habit of anything because it's different when something becomes a pattern.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, go Glenn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've had a couple of questions come in, so keep writing your questions, and for those, you can open the question and answer section, and you can, there's only a couple there at the moment, but don't be shy, everyone. There's one that's had a couple of upvotes, so we might move on to the next little section.
Cool.
Sweet.
Okay, career growth and career change, I think we're on to now.
Good times.
Awesome.
So what is the best tip you can offer for continued career growth and success?
We're coming out strong. Okay, so I'll give one tip, you give one tip.
Yeah, sounds good.
My tip, unsurprising to anybody that's listened to any episode of the podcast, would be this idea of career self-reliance. But in this context, my tip to you would be to find opportunities to add to your career. I like to call them extracurriculars that go beyond the 9 to 5. So don't just think within the parameters of what your employer or your organisation offers you in regards to professional development. Actually work out what can you do outside of that, either off your own back or in your own time, with your own money, whatever the resources are, and use that to create a competitive advantage, but also career security, which is a topic we've been talking about lately.
Yeah, that's it. My best tip would be find opportunities to stretch. So focus on growth. One of those things I think we usually think that we're not qualified for certain roles. I think we can allow that to shape, I suppose, our next step. But actually saying, you know what, where there's an opportunity that comes out that feels like a stretch or feels like it could be that little bit beyond what you feel capable of, go for it. Because of those moments, I think, are some of the best moments in your career where you get that huge upswing of stretch and growth that can shape and really define where you head. So that'd be my recommendation.
Can I jump in there with a question that's been upvoted? It's from Anonymous, and it kind of relates to this career growth development. Do recruiters and HR professionals like being contacted via LinkedIn, especially if it's a cold message, having no personal relationship or introductions from your own network? Can imagine they get lots of messages.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to be contacted as long as you appear to have put some effort in.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely needs to have connected. Like I'd be saying, if I was contacting you, hey, I noticed you've worked for Forsyth. I can see you've worked in recruitment. Now you're in that growth space. How exciting. I'd love to do X that relates to something Em's done. And then you put your pitch out. Like, so you're kind of connecting with who Em is. And for me personally, I'd much rather a LinkedIn message than an email.
Me too. Yep.
Because you can look them up. You can look them up and you can see. Like, I'd much prefer someone to. I had a couple of people today cold message me on LinkedIn. I was like really super stoked because they'd put a lot of effort in. Whereas if someone's reaching out to my email about a job, I'm like, no, I can't see who you are.
And it can be as simple as, hey, I listened to the episode of your podcast recently, and then go into what you're actually after. But at least you flattered me a little bit first.
Yeah.
And it's just stroking the human ego. But I agree. The email, you're at risk of having to say, hey, here's my resume, can you get me a job on an email, and missing the opportunity to find a more human connection that you can get from LinkedIn. There's a photo and things there.
So thanks for sending your questions. Keep them coming, and remember, just throw the questions in the Q&A section of Zoom, not the webinar chat. So, Shell, I'll throw back to you because this is a question that you really wanted to answer.
Oh, what is it?
It's point 2 in the career growth section.
Point 2.
How to know what the actual heck you should do with your career.
It's such a good question.
We should have just started.
What the actual heck do I do with my career?
We should have started and finished with that. It could be the whole webinar and we're done.
Just one question, but it's like so legit.
I know, and it captures so much.
So I think everyone is like this at multiple points in their career. I think this year, I feel like we do this podcast, but I'm always like, what the heck am I doing in my career? Like, what am I doing? But I think the key thing is finding out what you value. Like when I think back to that weird job example that I just mentioned, what you value as a person is way more important than what you earn. Like we can get Glenn's fine spending plan to figure out and get ourselves a pay rise through the spending plan.
He didn't even tell you to say that.
He didn't, but I
See, we're good at this webinar thing.
Bless you.
But it is really important to go, what do I value as a person? What's important to me? How do I find a job that actually merges those two things?
It's sustainable. Pay, yes, absolutely. You need a certain amount of it to live a certain lifestyle that you're after, but that's more like a hit of dopamine when you get a pay rise, and it feels really great at first, but that feeling doesn't last very long compared to values.
Yes, and actually today's episode we did with a guy called Ben Carruthers, worked at Atlassian, did a lot of stuff around design thinking. We talk about how you can solve your career problems, like what the actual heck should you do with your career, using design thinking, and we talk a lot about how you find what you value, what's important to you. So please check it out, make sure you listen, it's great. All right, next question is for you, Em.
Okay.
I'd like to apply for jobs in a different industry, but don't want to appear overqualified due to my education and experience. What should I do?
Sometimes I worry that I'm at risk of just repeating myself, and I'm about to. But I think what you can take away from that is that when you're moving through your career, including a recruitment process or even development, you can actually apply the same tips and tricks over and over and over again in order to navigate. There doesn't have to be a different way each time.
Yeah.
And so what I'm talking about here is, again, the hidden job market. If you're looking to change careers or change industries, and you've got any level of concern about what is transferable and what you have to offer, if you purely rely on your resume and you're looking for that 70% match to a job ad, you're probably going to find that the opportunities to apply are sort of few and far between. Or if you do apply, you're very quickly going to go into the no pile on a first cull by a recruiter. And that's because you're not offering enough. And absolutely, we need to use our cover letter. We talked about that earlier. But if you want to maximize your opportunity and you want to play in a different game where there's less competition and have the opportunity to control your story and your narrative, then go and make human connections. You will absolutely get your next job, whether it be changing industries or not, through conversations. So the more conversations that you have, the better.
Yeah. And getting a wrap-up signal from our friend Glenn James.
I'm just trying to keep the conversation flowing. There's lots of questions.
Look, it's fine. One final thought would be to just don't say overqualified. I really don't like it when people tell me in an interview, I know I'm overqualified. I'm like, let me decide if you're overqualified or not. Like, just
and if
don't
your quals are completely irrelevant, leave them off.
Yeah, that's it.
So, is it ever too late, Shell, to make a career change?
That's a great question.
You're a little bit older than me.
Am I? Just a little bit older and wiser. I like to think. You're like no. So sorry. How I would respond to that question is, there's finding the right time to change a career rather than is it ever too late? No, it's never too late. It's more about finding the right time to change your career. And so a couple of things we did talk about in the quarter life crisis episode where we're changing career industries, you need a few things set up in order to do that. So if you want to change careers and you're going from, say, like a middle management or a specialist role back to the start, you need to have a financial buffer. All those things need to be in place in order to make the changes. So that's why I say, it's about finding the right time to do it. You do need to have things set up well in order to make a career change. But we were talking to that someone from Macrindle the other day, and they said it's now like 6 career changes in your working life.
Yep.
So we're going to do them. It's just when's right time.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I've got another question. It's our final question for this segment around career growth and change. It's another question you're much more qualified than me to answer. And
would you say overqualified?
Oh, not yet.
Not yet.
This is not me. This is the person that's asked the question. I'm pregnant. What are 3 things I should do to ensure my career doesn't suffer when I have a baby and take some time off?
Yes. Well, this is a good question to the person who put this in, because I'm actually round 2.
See, I told you weren't overqualified yet.
Yay! Thanks, friends.
Congratulations.
And look, I'm announcing it here first because I just care about this community so much.
Does Sam know?
He does.
But also, Shell, did you ask this question?
No, I didn't ask this.
Did you sneak it in?
Yeah, I want to know. No, so I have done it once before and it's about to second time. So in January, I'll be heading off on leave again. And so a couple of things that I learnt from round 1 and a couple of things I've done for round 2, really quick. Ask up front to do your keeping in touch days. So part of the legislation around parental leave means that employers are able to offer you 10 keeping in touch days while you're off on leave. Those are so important because they help you to stay connected to the business. They also help you to just feel like you're not really isolated from your work. And so I always encourage people to use those. I myself make sure I've booked them in before I go on leave. And so already thinking those things through. The second thing I would do is, and what I did while I was off, do some kind of study. Now, I know it's full on when your kid's not sleeping, but...
You did just say you were going on leave, so it sounds like you've got heaps of time.
Recreational leave. Just make sure if you're wanting to kind of keep on top of things, the study for me really helped. It helped me feel energized, but it also helped in my confidence, because your confidence can get knocked when you go on parental leave. It's... it can be really hard. And then the third thing and the most important thing is give yourself grace. Be kind to yourself, because your job and work will always be there, but that beautiful time that you get with your new baby is once in a lifetime with that new little bub. So be kind, give yourself grace. Careers will always be there.
Love it.
Nice one.
Thank you, Shell.
Now, we might jump in and ask 2 of the live questions, and the reason I'm giving the girls a bit of a go along because we want to answer as many questions as possible and also look at some of the live questions. Anonymous says, what is your advice for someone who has had periods of unemployment gaps in their resume and is still trying to find their career feet in their early 30s?
Yeah,
I see you looking at me.
I was looking at you thinking this is for you.
Look, you need to get really clear on the narrative that you can turn up and tell your potential new employer. So perhaps an interview. And the way I would recommend you do that is focus on what you're learning. It is absolutely okay to be experimenting, but you need to be able to, at least with retrospect, maybe looking ahead, you're still not sure what you want to do, but with retrospect, be able to communicate a narrative that sounds like you've got your stuff together and you've been taking something meaningful and valuable away from each of these experiences, so that you can actually convince, because that's what you will need to do, you will need to convince and persuade that potential new employer that those experiences that you've had have led you to this point, and therefore whatever this opportunity is with them makes sense.
Yeah.
There's another question here, and there's a couple of questions on pay, and I think ladies will do the pay section next.
We are, yes.
This is just a little bit of fun. And just give us a raise of hands if you're enjoying tonight. And again, we just, and there's some hands going up, we're just experimenting, we're trying out this. It's the first webinar the girls have done with our community, so we're thankful that they're here. So thank you everyone for raising your hands. What are some of the absolute turn-offs in a cover letter or resume? So I want 2 turn-offs each.
Oh, this is so good. Okay. Oh, I feel like I need time. You know, this question wasn't expected.
What about while you think of the turn-offs, let's relaunch and do a poll.
Good one.
And we're going to, before we get into the pay section, whoops, sorry, we've already done that one. We're going to do a when was your last pay rise poll. So while this poll's propagating in the background, everyone can find that and vote. What are 2 turn-offs, Shell and Em? Career, cover letters, and resumes.
Okay.
The 80s glam shot, is that one of them?
Well, I was going to go there. That's a controversial piece on my millennial career.
It is.
The photo. But no, I
wasn't going to reference the photo.
I'm not going to reference the photo either. For me, the first 2 things that came to mind. One, I prefer people to talk in first person. So in your cover letter, talk in first person. If you talk, third person?
Oh, it's so bad. You're right. It's terrible.
Emily is or Emily did. I just think that's cringy. So I encourage.
People actually do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
People do a lot of things.
There you go.
And then the second thing that came to mind was making it all about what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Have I stolen yours?
No, that's so good. I'm just like amening you.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So make it about the employer and the value you can add, not the value you're trying to reap.
Yeah, they're both really good. The first one I think of, now I feel like it's gone from my mind. It is to do with not being customised to the bit.
Ah, yes.
People, I feel like I read a lot of cover letters and they're
addressed to someone else about a different job.
To whom it may concern. It's just very general, and it's not even about like. You can tell they've just changed the job title going regarding whatever role, but everything else is the same. I expect every cover letter to be customised to the role and to the business.
Yep, agree.
So turn off if it's not done like that. And then the next turn off would be I don't like too much business jargon. Mm-hmm. So keeping it simple. If you try and I don't like pseudo intellectual stuff. I feel like sometimes people try and make themselves sound smart. Keep it simple language.
Not too much technical jargon either.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look at the results of the pay rise question. So the question was, when was your last pay rise? 38% of people said in the last 12 months.
Yeah, cool.
And then 33% of people said, what's a pay rise? So there's a third of people
those people that have got itchy feet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's some kind of correlation.
Yeah, and then 14% said within the last 6 months, and 10% even said very recently, and 6 or 9 very recently, and 6% said within the last 3 months. So
can we do a poll? I
can type one up
about whether people are expecting to get a pay rise for this year post-COVID.
So maybe in the next 3 months.
Yeah, okay, are people expecting, because obviously pay rises generally start kicking off around this time, new financial year, but
yeah. Well, maybe as the first question that you ask, there's one here, how can we negotiate salaries with COVID?
Yeah, good one. So we talked about this the other day on a little bonus episode, where we talked through just getting a read on the business, where the business is at, so the financial performance of the business. If you're on JobKeeper, I would recommend it's not a good time to ask about pay, because if you've got people that are on stand down in your business, I think it's pretty insensitive to come to your boss with a pay increase. I would wait until that changes, be it if it ends in September, if people come off in September and your business goes back to normal, or if JobKeeper gets extended for your business until January, I would actually wait. I just think it's not a good look to be asking for a pay rise if you're on JobKeeper.
I would agree. We did talk, I'm just casting my mind back to that particular episode. We did talk about this idea of if it's maybe you're not on JobKeeper, but it is maybe tough goings, then perhaps you could still have a conversation that says, hey, I know normally this time of year we would talk about pay increases. I don't feel like it's appropriate to have that discussion with you right now. Would you agree, boss? They're probably going to say yes. But I did just want to check your thinking on whether or not we've got, to the best of our crystal ball knowledge, an idea about whether or not we'll have those conversations in 6 months, or we're just going to park them till this time next year. So you could still have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and you might even be saying, are there other things we can be doing aside from pay?
Yeah,
so are they
like
considering, you know, it might be additional leave. They might be willing to do certain things that have less of a financial impact at that time.
Yeah, and I'll just ask Shell. I've just got this next poll up, and I'm going to launch it now. And the question is, are you expecting to get a pay rise within the next 6 months? There's yep, nah, I'm on JobKeeper, and another one, again, what's a pay rise? So, but just on that, Shell, like, if someone works for a government agency or whatever, and it's just like, no, it's by the book, you know, you can't walk in and go, hey, can I have a pay rise type wink, wink. Around the extra things that you can ask for in a role that is a government role, what are some other options there for somebody?
Yeah, so I'd be focusing on learning and development, any of those kinds of peripheral benefits. Usually they'll have, they'll publish obviously their learning and development and benefits kind of framework. So really look into that and then take a couple of options to your manager. So if you can have a look at their remuneration and benefits policy, try and find out what's on offer and then what you're actually leveraging versus what's available, because usually there's more that is available than what you're actually uptaking.
True. It's almost like doing a little bit of a health check as well on, are you actually taking advantage of every benefit that's on offer? Because there might be benefits that you just didn't even realise were there, but unless you go and ask for them, no one else is going to come and put them in front of you.
Yeah.
All right, I'll end the poll and I'll share the results with everybody. Are you expecting to get a pay rise within the next 6 months? 31% yep, 38% said nah, 15% is on, they're on JobKeeper, and 16% were like, again, what's a pay rise? And there was just another comment there should be an option for maybe. Sorry, we're just doing this on the fly. But yeah, so I think that's interesting. Like, there's 31% of people who are pretty confident within the next 6 months, and almost 40 where it's off the table.
Sure. And I mean, that's good, even in terms of, we did suggest, so let's say you're on the maybe pile, or you're hopeful but you're not sure based on the business's performance. And do you want to talk us through what you would do if you're kind of unsure but you want to pitch a pay rise?
So you think it's off the table? So just set the scene for me again.
It might be. You're hopeful. It may be possible. It's not.
Yeah, sure.
So in the next 6 months, how would you pitch it, and would you pitch it differently based on COVID and whatnot?
So I think the key is not to surprise your employer. That's really important. So you could, if you're unsure about the timing, the first thing I would do is have a conversation now, but do it in a reasonably non-confrontational way. So this is on my radar. I wasn't sure about the timing. I don't want to come to you at a time that's, inconvenient or inappropriate. What do you think? And so you're actually asking more questions in order to get a gauge on where your boss's mind is at. I think that's the first thing. If you know that they're scheduled for September, they're always in September, then you might still like to ask if it's on track, but you can wait a little while and again, still book that meeting. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And then I start to think about this idea of building the business case and practicing the ask that we've talked about a lot before. We did a whole episode on that and it was quite a long one, but there was a lot of detail to go into. And I've learnt a lot, even just from talking to you, about actually preparing what value do you add and linking that not only to your role, but also the strategy of the organisation. Yeah. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, and trying to find, when people go for pay rises, I feel like lots of people ask for a pay rise, and so seeing good ones and then seeing them done really terribly. All the good ones have in common is they make it not about their needs. So sometimes we want a pay rise because we have these things going on in the background, like renovating, all these things. Don't make it to do with any of those personal things. Make it about your performance and how that aligns to the business's performance overall. So for me, if I was doing that, I'd be saying, okay, well, I've reduced staff turnover in my role by X, which correlates with X savings for the business, which increases our financial performance. Find a way in your role to connect the dots for your manager, because they're not always thinking about that, but you need to think about that in your business case. And that needs to be a one-pager in writing to go with your conversation and okay, Glenn's sticking up his hand.
Just a question, because there are a couple of questions here about pay. Zoe asks, given that you can back yourself up with proof of performance, how often is fair to ask for a pay rise? And what percentage should be expected?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we had a similar question to this, so we could even add a little bit to the tail, which we'll do. I think as far as how often should you ask for a pay rise, I believe that the 12-month mark is really standard.
Yeah.
So an annual pay review is quite typical. And if you've started in a new organisation, I would apply that same rule. So wait 12 months. Or if you've started in a new role in the same organisation, wait 12 months. If you receive no as an answer, and again, Shell and I have spent a fair bit of time talking about this in the past, then you could minimise that or reduce that to 6 months.
Yes.
But there needs to have been change. There's a reason why there was a no. And so it can't just be a passing of time. It needs to be 6 months. That's a reasonable amount of time to enact the change that needs to be enacted, and then you can ask again, but you should be able to turn up with a stronger business case at that time. As far as the percentage to ask for, look, Shell, you might have, I know you've taught in the past, and I'll let you jump in with exactly where to look, but this one, it's all about market research and about knowing your industry, because different industries have, I guess, depending even on the year, different expectations.
Yeah, and so as a percentage, if you look at what's happening with wage growth externally, wage growth has been really low over the last few years. So I think it's sitting around 2.8%. So around 3% is a norm for a pay rise. But if you check externally, so there's a couple of places I would go when I'm preparing to ask for a pay rise. I would look at Glassdoor, I'd look at Hayes, I'd look at Pay Scale, get at least 3 different data points. Hayes Salary Guide is really useful. Just know that sometimes there is super captured in that. So just look out for that as you're putting together your data points. So then you can compare your salary to that, and that'll tell you what you're worth. So it'll show that difference, and then you'll use that to shape what you ask for. So if you find out that you're getting paid 80K, but externally it's 90, well, then that gives you a reference point, and you might go in for a certain percentage pay rise based on that, and it might be higher than that 2.8%, but that's how I would kind of frame it.
The other thing I would add to that is, so I'll start at the executive end. So if you're in an executive or leadership role, it's normal to find that midpoint and then actually have plus minus 20, 25%. So for example, we're talking in extremes. I hope there's some CEOs out there, but we might all still be working towards it. So a CEO, they might attract a salary of $300,000, and that's the midpoint. But actually, if you were to map all CEOs, they could be anywhere between plus minus 20 to 25% of that. When we're earlier in our career, or the earlier we are in our career, the smaller that range is. Right. We're paid closer to an award rate. And as we build experience, what happens is us as an engineer and the engineer sitting next to us, we actually start to find that the range widens because where we're at as an individual and what we can contribute beyond a degree, for example, or something that's sort of that entry level, that actually expands. And so keeping that in mind, I think, is important, that even if you do that research and you find that midpoint as a reference, there is going to be a range either side.
That's it.
There's another question here from an anonymous, I can't say that. How, excuse me, everyone, how do you have any advice for negotiating a wage before accepting a job offer? I think that probably ties into a question that we had sent in before the webinar. How do you know what you're worth when it comes to pay? So yeah, pre-job, what are you worth? And then negotiating, how do you seal that deal?
Sweet. We've talked, I don't know if we've talked on the podcast, but I know you and I have had many talks about how you talk about pay in recruitment. Because I'm like, I've got to like, I love talking about pay, so I just feel like I'm happy to talk about it. But you go first.
I am a believer in, and in my experience, waiting until you've got the greatest position of power is really useful in a recruitment process. And the point at which you have the greatest position of power is when you are the preferred candidate and they really want you. So you're at the pointy end of a recruitment process. My concern with talking about it any earlier, as early as Shell likes to, is that...
Which is like, you first meet them and...
Yeah. Is that it can be misinterpreted in regards to your values. So where you're assessing an organisation based on all impressions, including the first ones, as to what their values are, they're doing the same for you.
Yeah.
And if you come out of the gates too hot and too fast on salary, you're at risk of being misunderstood to value money, and that just might misalign with the organisation. But you've also missed the opportunity to prove to them how much you're worth through the recruitment process. So you haven't got that power. I'd love to think that you come into a recruitment process on even playing fields from a power dynamic point of view, but you just don't. No. So the closer you can get to being wanted by them and needed by them, the better chance you've got to negotiate, in my experience.
Yeah, and so then we get to that negotiation stage, which, like you're saying, is at the very final end. And so usually what will happen is they'll come to you with an offer. And I think in most cases, there's that space for negotiation. So going in and assuming that they want to negotiate, rather than what I see, and it's typically females who are less likely to negotiate, which is really sad. I think it's good to not accept that first offer. So go in with, great to hear, here's what I was kind of thinking of in terms of range, how does that sit with you? And opening it up as a conversation, not kind of just saying, this is what I need, but saying, here's what I was thinking in terms of salary. But and
you can even include in that conversation, to make it a richer conversation, some of those other hot topics for you, or those points that are important to you in regards to learning and development, in regards to flexibility, but talk practically about flexibility. What does that actually mean to you? In regards to career progression, again, get really specific about what that means to you, and have it be a richer conversation that's not just about money, so that you're making sure that if the money's not quite, I guess it's a negotiation, right? So what are all the levers you can move, and where's the point at which they're all sort of lining up so that you're holistically comfortable?
That's it.
And if they try and take something away, it's like, that's okay, but this is negotiation, so what do we add to make up for it that's still just as important to me?
And I think one of the turn-offs I've had is where people come in really hard on that negotiation, but I would be really upfront saying, I'm really excited about the role, this is something I've really wanted to do and I'm really looking forward to, and then you enter into, here's what I'm thinking, rather than just make it feel abrupt, like still telling people your desire is to work for that business.
Get creative. You can actually also, if you get to a point in the negotiation that's not quite where you want to be, but they don't have any further to move at this stage, get commitment on a review in 3 months or 6 months, because it's a hell of a lot easier to actually negotiate once you've not only talking to potential, so before you've got the job, you're talking to potential. Once you're in the job for 6 months, you can talk not only to potential, but also performance, and they've had first-hand experience of how good you are.
Yeah.
We might move now. I might put up another poll, and it's about changing careers or industries, and we've just launched that poll. And while that's going, ladies, I'm just going to print a whole heap of these questions that have come in, and then I'll just give them to you.
You really are a great executive assistant.
Well, you know what I mean? I just really want to do the best thing that I can. And then at least you can read the questions, and we'll just keep things going.
Cool.
So the poll that's up there at the moment... Oh, there's a few hands being raised. Hello, if you're raising your hands. Have you ever changed your careers or industries? Now, I'll get the poll, I'll end the poll, and then I'll read it out for the ladies. Now, I'm going to share the results. 38% of people said they have changed careers or industries with no regrets. 2% said yes, worst decision ever. 36%, and this is interesting, and I might get you to spend some time there. 36% said no, I'm too scared. And then 24% said no because they love what they do.
Woo!
Yeah, right.
Okay.
It's hard to know. Is the too scared?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you,
There
Sarah.
he is.
So they're the...
Yeah, good one.
I wonder if the too scared thing is about, like, is it money driven? Is it risk driven? Like, I'd like to understand that a bit more. What are some of those kind of fear drivers, I guess?
Anyway.
Okay, what have we got there?
Okay.
Maybe we can flag that for a podcast episode about the fear side of things.
We could definitely do that.
That's a decent size.
So, well, on that, here's the first one. It's all about changing careers, and it could help these people. What are your tips around changing careers to an industry and role different to your current one? Research, I think, but the research I always love the most is talking to people.
Yeah.
Talking to other people who have gone through the experience of changing careers, and talking to people who are doing what you think you might like to do.
Yeah, and if you can, trying to get a sense. So when you talk about that extracurriculars kind of piece, what can you be doing nights or on the weekends to get a read into that industry you're wanting to go in? Because I think sometimes people are scared because they don't know if they'll actually like it. So it might feel like a bit of a pipe dream, but then when you actually get in there, you're like, is the grass greener? So try and get into it, be it connecting with especially small businesses. So if you can find, if I wanted to go from HR to marketing, I'd be finding a smaller business who does marketing and be connecting with that business owner, because smaller businesses are more likely to want volunteers than than some of the larger organisations. So connect and go, could I come and do a couple of hours a week with you just to get a sense of this marketing vibe and what the role is. And that's how I would try to test if I like it. But then if I know that I like it, then it's about, okay, well, what do I need to do to actually transition? And we talk, obviously, with Glenn about all the financial stuff that needs to be in place, but there's other things like study and so on.
We've got a hand raised.
I'll just like to keep it interactive, and I'll keep it anonymous just in case. Someone said for her it's the fear of the unknown. What will the hours be like? The culture, the people. Someone else said, I'd made a career jump a year ago. It's a slow process, but I feel more in control of my career, and the uncomfortable feelings are just growing pains. I went from advertising into IT/business consulting.
Wow, big change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love this idea. So I'm just finishing off what you were talking about there, Shell. I love the idea of once you're sort of working out the finances of your transition, also have a look at Seek job ads and LinkedIn profiles of the job that you believe you want in the future, and turn that into your to-do list. So you can look at that and you can chip away at, well, it appears that most people that have this career that I'm looking for have this piece of study or have this particular skill set or have worked at these couple of companies. So use those as your case studies to build your to-do list from.
And there's so much free online learning.
Oh my goodness.
Like, who wants to spend 50 grand on a degree when you can do a heap of online learning and get a read if that's something you're interested in?
Absolutely.
So jump on Coursera, wherever, go find that stuff.
Yep, LinkedIn Learning's another good one. I'm pretty certain you can get a 30-day free trial and go your hardest.
Get those email 30-day free trials.
Yeah, you just get heaps of them. So I just want to add, there's a question here, and then I'll turn it back on myself, but where was it? So that's right. Back to the last question briefly, and actually this is Alyssa. We love Alyssa. Hi, Alyssa.
Hey, Alyssa.
Hi, Alyssa.
Oh, we love you.
Yeah. So back to the last question briefly, for more recent grads that may not have 15 to 20 years experience yet, is 6 to 12 months still too short if you are navigating a new career? So this is all about how short is too short to leave. Yeah.
I personally don't think it is if you're in a new grad role.
No, but you still have to be mindful of the narrative you're building.
Yeah.
So I think if your first 5 years look like you've gone 6 to 12 months, 6 to 12 months, 6 to 12 months, and you can't clearly articulate what you got that was different from one company to the next, then it's not going to be any stronger or more acceptable, I don't think, than any stage of your career.
Except if you've done a career change. So if it's just like you were saying before, if you've gone, but you have to have a narrative around it.
Yeah. It's all about being purposeful.
And I think I know what Alyssa wants to do. I think Alyssa wants to go into HR from finance, in which case, just go for it. Well, HR is great.
I thought you were going to say, don't do it.
I love HR. It's weird.
Hey, Shell, there's a few questions in here that are talking about, so for example, this was the second most upvoted. What examples of point of difference should I try and incorporate if I'm currently working full time and find that I don't have much time for activities outside of work? But we've also had someone else ask, what are some examples of self-development that you would look upon favourably in regards to self-reliance? So career self-reliance rather. So I'll answer those questions together and you can jump in as I do. I am a massive fan of thinking of time as not something that you can create any more of, in the sense that we've all got the 24 hours in a day, and I'm about to sound like a bit of a preacher here, but you choose how you spend your time. And absolutely, it's really difficult when you're in full-time work, and you probably want to do other things as well. There are probably, a social life you want to upkeep. You might have a family. The list is endless. So I would encourage you to try and find an opportunity, even if you just start with one. Find one opportunity where you can actually combine the two. Yeah. I've personally made some of my best friends from being on the board of an organisation called Hunter Young Professionals. And so that's based in the Hunter, and there are similar ones. There's a Sydney one that I know of, and there'd be others in other parts of the country. And what I was able to do was go and hang out with some pretty cool people that are my age and interested in similar things to me and have a similar career drive. I could actually lean on them for advice as I built relationships, but it also meant that I was spending some of my social time, so to speak, doing something that I could put on my resume and that I could learn career-related skills or have career-related experiences for. So a little bit of multitasking might be one idea that comes to mind straight away.
Yeah, and I don't think thinking about it in terms of hours, but thinking about it in terms of how do you look at, is there key projects you've done in that time?
Yeah.
There's a good question about from Anonymous. In a full-time role, how do you define reasonable overtime? Does it depend on industry? How does a salary above award or time in lieu contribute to what's reasonable? This is a really good question and something that comes up a lot. There's not a lot of case law around reasonable overtime. So that then feeds into, it kind of feels like a free-for-all. My sense from what I've seen in quite a number of organisations, 5 hours a week, which I know for some people feels like a lot, is probably considered reasonable. That's getting to work half an hour early. So if you're 8:30 to 5, it's getting to work at 8 and leaving at 5:30. And that accounts for things like you have a long lunch sometimes, you have like a little bit of flexibility. So I would see that 5 hours as being roundabout reasonable. And that's assuming you're not paid above award. So that if you're working in government's much more clear cut than that, obviously, but at kind of most organisations, I feel like it's pretty give and take. What's your sense on that? Because that's obviously just my perspective.
Yeah, and look, you are much, I guess your skill set fits much better to answering that question, but I certainly feel like that's an appropriate answer, but sometimes it might not look exactly like 5 hours. I think it's important to remember it might look like 10 hours one week and no hours the next couple of weeks. Or there might even be a period of 3 months where you feel like you're just working and working and working. But then you've got another period of the year that you do have the luxury to attend an appointment or attend a long lunch and no one really asks where you are if you scoot off half an hour early here and there. So I think particularly if you've got this drive for career, there is a cultural element to this that's just built into the way that our careers work, and it is hard to put a black and white rule on.
That's right, and that's why there isn't a clear answer. And so if you're doing more than 5 hours, then maybe have a conversation. But anything kind of less than that to me feels like it could come off as entitlements based. And if one of my team members was asking me about those extra hours they were doing, I would find it one of those things where I'm like, well, you know, we do what we need to do to get the job done. That's kind of, and I know that can be rub people the wrong way or whatever, but that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah.
Just while you're going there, ladies, I've just done a poll because I do know Shell and Em are morning people. Well, Emily...
One of us is.
I come alive in the evening.
Oh, I am. It's past my bedtime.
I put a poll up and said, how are you feeling about the webinar? Basically, 56% of people said, keep going till 9, please. Woo!
Oh, okay.
23% said, go all night, baby.
Oh,
So,
who are these people?
well, there's 20% of people who are tired. And
Same. I'm with them.
So of the 20% who are tired, if you do need to go, there will be a replay that we'll put up on YouTube in the coming days, and also the replay podcast. But, you know, 80% want more questions, so we're going to keep going. So just remember to keep upvoting the questions, and we'll extract everything we can out of
How are you
ladies.
feeling, Em?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, don't you
Do you know
worry.
what time Em got up, everyone?
I don't know.
4:30.
4:30? Are you serious?
I was like, why would you ever do that? Why would you ever do that? She's like,
Gotta find more time in the
and
day.
you're like, I need to exercise. Excuse me? 4:30.
So, and then also for those that are leaving now, thank you for...
Yeah, thank you.
Like, we just want to say it's okay if you've got to go to sleep.
We won't
Not
take it
everyone's a night
personally.
person. I'm going to also put in the chat, before you do jump off, I'm going to put into the chat just the feedback form.
Excuse me.
So, you know, this is the first career webinar that we've done, and we do value everybody's feedback. And I'll just say, please go easy on all of us, because, you know, we don't charge for this stuff, and we can't please everyone. So just while the girls are having a bit of a breather, feel free to go to bed, everyone, and you can catch the replay later this week. And thank you for the feedback. And there's a few people saying thank you in the chat.
Oh,
so,
we love you. Thanks for hanging out.
yeah. And Daniel said, keep going. I'm listening from the gym.
Oh, good
Oh,
one.
wow, you're gymming late.
I want
Go,
to-
Daniel.
There's a question here. I'm going to hijack this because it speaks to my heart. I
interesting.
just decided after 10 years as a tradesman to go to uni at age 30. Any tips to leverage my background in the new work I'm entering, which is business?
Ooh.
Go.
No, you're right. You go.
No.
I want to think for a second.
It just feels like me.
Yeah.
Well, you go.
You
What
go
were you
then.
gonna say?
No. Do you need to, do you guys need a 2-minute break or anything?
No, it's
No,
cool.
but you jump in with what you were going to say.
Well, I would just say, Jesse, if you haven't, listen to the Quarter Life Crisis podcast episode, because it was, for me, like, I left a trade. I hadn't been in that trade for 10 years, but I would say one thing: you will be so far ahead of the curve, because you're going to go to uni at age 30, right? And you've got 10 years life experience on people that are just leaving school. Now, the reason I say you're going to be ahead of the curve, leverage your background. You know, if you're at a lecture, you will actually know just from experience what information that, oh yeah, I don't need to remember that, or you'll be able to pick up, yes, that is what I'm remembering. And I know for myself, the younger I was, if I went to a lecture or if I went somewhere, I just wanted to absorb everything, but you didn't have to. You kind of, just from your experience, I think you'll be able to glean what's something that I need to hang on to and what isn't.
Yeah.
And I just think the life experience, you know, you're a tradesperson, so your practical skills, your forward thinking, all the stuff that made you a good tradesperson will make you kill it in your new career.
I would suggest as well, even just as probably a little bit to life experience and a little bit to having been in the workforce, your confidence level. So your confidence in whether we're talking about the hidden job market. So there's going to come a point where you'll be looking for your next job and you have a network already, but you also have, I believe, more confidence in actually going out there and having conversations, and use this time. You might still be working as a tradie while you're studying, I'm not sure, but use this time to continue to keep in touch with those networks, leverage those networks, and build on your experience so that you come out of there with 10 years plus a degree plus a bit extra beyond your competition.
And I think it's really good when you're making a career change, and I know there's lots of people considering career change at the moment. when you look at your career journey to date and you're thinking about that next step, so say you're going from trade to business, knowing how that becomes your unique differentiator, starting to see it as a positive, not I'm starting from ground zero, but I'm actually being propelled forward. And so it actually shifts your mindset as you're stepping into that career change. I know one of the things that I went to a conference, they were talking about some of the best, I know I shouldn't anchor on HR too much, but the best HR people are marketers. And I remember thinking, that's it. When people have had career changes that come from a totally different industry, that becomes their unique value proposition compared to the rest of the market. So as you're looking at those opportunities to change careers, look at it as a positive, not as a detractor.
And even think about what have you learned through the last 10 years that have given you an understanding of your values and what brings you happiness at work, because that will then help guide. A business degree is quite a broad degree, so you have so many choices. Where do you go next?
Yeah.
There's a question here, and I can't think of any more amazing people to answer it than Shell and Em. It's from Anonymous. I have a question about wage gaps. I found out that men in my team earn around 10 to 15K more than them just for doing the same jobs, and they have the same experience. How can I approach this problem? I want to get the same salary. And I'll let you answer it, because I'm just like, I just want to encourage anyone out there, particularly female, because it is about the wage gap.
Yeah.
Just don't take crap from anyone.
Right.
Like, actually, you are worth it, and you're probably a better employee than the guy anyway.
Oh, seriously. So, one of the things that's Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, she talks a lot. Have you read that?
No, I haven't, but I've spent a lot of time watching Sheryl, listening to her. I just haven't read her book.
She talks a lot about this issue of why women don't, negotiate. Like we talked about before, men are much more in the recruitment process, much more open and happy to negotiate than females. And I think the same goes for the dynamic with the pay gap. It's innate bias and unconscious bias or conscious bias that has led to this horrible thing. It's also due to parental leave.
I was about to say it's absences from the workforce.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so having those conversations, and it's hard when you find out someone's pay info, and I know this happens, but if you find out that the person sitting next to you is paid more than you, it's difficult to necessarily use that in a pay information if you're not supposed to know. Because sometimes it happens where things get leaked, but you're not supposed to know.
I also feel like if it's transparent, which is unusual, but if, for example, it was okay to know, I would still be careful not to lean your business case too heavily on, well, they're paid more, so I want to be paid more. I just worry that will get you offside. But that's where we start to get into the complexity and greyness when we're talking about the wage gap in particular. The thing that came to mind for me immediately was have the conversation. So the worst thing you can do is not speak up, not have a conversation. So I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is have it.
And I mean, chances are, if you've been chances are that team member, like if you look at the frequency with which men will ask for a pay rise compared to women, it's a lot more frequent. So just have that assumption that the reason they might be getting paid 15% higher than me is because maybe they've had 3 more conversations
and they've incrementally built up to that bigger gap.
That's right. And so then you're like, well, I'm in catch-up mode, so I'm going in next week with my business case, and preparing it still, but you're not making it necessarily about the person next to you, but you're saying, I'm going to be more bold in terms of coming and asking for a pay rise rather than just waiting for my manager to come and say, hey, you deserve a pay rise. I'm going to give you an increase.
Question, like, could somebody say to their team, like, what's our gender pay gap policy here?
Yeah.
Or is that a bit loaded? Like,
no, and it depends on the size of the organisation. So in any organisation I've worked in, we've had to do the WGEA gender pay reporting. And that happens every year. And around this year, it was a bit later, but usually around May, where the organisation has to report on what the pay analysis is, and it's very detailed. You have to put every single employee's info into that. So that is supposed to get published and sent out every year to all staff. So you can ask for that report if your organisation meets that kind of criteria. I can't remember how many staff. Do you know how many people?
No, I don't. It's not something I'm across.
I think it's over 50, but I could be wrong.
Over 50, okay.
I think. There's a question here from Anonymous. How do you write an effective elevator pitch about yourself that could be used in your LinkedIn bio or interviews, etc.?
Go, Em.
It's so hard writing about yourself, isn't it? Like, it's just, you feel a bit cringy. I'm a massive fan of Googling. So I would actually Google best LinkedIn profiles and take cues from Google. Also take a read of LinkedIn profiles that you stumble across that tickle your fancy if you like the vibe. And another way to kick you off is actually if you're finding it difficult to describe yourself, consider either in your own mind, if I was to ask my friend or my colleague how they would describe me, what would they say? Or what is that thing that people come to me for to try and find your point of differentiation? Or actually go and do that. So go and ask people around you who know you well to describe you in 3 words, or to send you one sentence describing you, and just use that to find themes and then piece something together. The final thing is just have a crack. So often we get writer's block, and we not only are cringing over talking about ourselves, but we're also not necessarily confident writing and adding personality to our writing. It's a skill that it's very enviable to be comfortable with that. And so the best thing you can do is get something up there, tweak it as you go, and just practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
A question here from Anonymous, and it's about red flags in interviews. But before I read the question, I just want to encourage everybody, if you do listen to the My Millennial Career podcast on Apple, if you can jump on, grab your iPhone now, open the podcast and give the girls a nice 5-star and write some nice words, because it means a lot to them. And I just wanted to do that. They didn't know I was going to say this. Are there any
Thank you, though. That does mean a lot to us.
It really does.
Well, it just makes the work and the quality of content that you put out there, it just makes it feels good. So are there any red flag examples of which we can pick up at interviews, especially if you haven't attended interviews in a while? So besides the fact whether they ask you whether you'll hire people based on their skin colour,
so bad.
Any other major red flags?
Yeah. And the reason why that story is so funny is because I think they asked me every question you should never ask. So health, anything about your health is a red flag to me.
Yeah, were you like, are there cameras here? Am I being like, what is that, punked?
Is this some kind of weird test? Like, this is crazy. So health, when you're going to have a baby, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. But there's more subtleties than those. Those are extreme. What do you think of the more subtle ones?
Look, for me, and this might go more so to, and they're absolutely not inappropriate or extreme like the ones you've just described, and it might go more to my standards of where I'd like to work. But I actually think of things like if they're running late, if they don't appear to be present, mind and body, if they don't spend a reasonable amount of time. What is a reasonable amount of time? I think 30 minutes at a minimum is a reasonable amount of time for an interview. I talked about not being present. That could look like somebody who maybe is on their phone, or, so what are we here to talk about today? Who are you? Maybe they haven't actually worked out what they're walking into. Those things, I think, they could be personal. You might be comfortable to work in an environment that exhibits those behaviours, but it's not the vibe I would be looking for.
Or they're not familiar with your resume, so it feels like they haven't actually properly read your background.
And the reason these things are red flags is not just because I think you should be giving me the time of day, but because if that's how I believe in an interview as an opportunity to sell yourself and for the employer to sell themselves. And if that's the best that you get from that employer or that organisation, then I can only imagine what you might experience when you're in the business. And even if it's innocent disorganisation, my concern is that when it comes to your professional development, pay conversations or any other commitments in relation to your employment, that they might be just as disorganised and lack follow through.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And I'll just make a note that probably the 20% of morning people have left. So it was almost 20% people who left exactly.
I'm still here.
Anonymous said, and we might just go some rapid fire to get through these. I would love to hear you talk about career security, particularly in contract jobs. So if someone's a contractor.
So good.
So I wonder if this person has said career security specifically, because we did an episode on that recently, as opposed to job security. Career security being all about what else you're doing in your career, so that regardless of when that contract comes to an end, you're going to be totally fine in getting your next job. From a job security point of view, so if you're literally just talking about keeping that contract, then I think you obviously want to do a good job, but I would also encourage open and transparent conversations regularly throughout that contract.
And so in terms of if you're on a contract, or your temporary contract, or your freelance, making sure throughout every contract you're aiming to get that best portfolio that you possibly can to take with you, as well as references from every employer. So those would be the things I'd be aiming for out of every contract.
Yeah, and I'd probably add some unsolicited comments.
It's not like you.
Love it.
So if you're a contractor, like, you are effectively self-employed, so you always need one eye on tomorrow, one eye on today. Like, you're always out there prospecting and just making connections. Anonymous asked, I'm scared my employer won't go back to 100% wages or will string it out as long as possible after COVID lockdown. Thoughts on how to approach this?
100% wages, is that in terms of stand down?
That would just be, they'd be on reduced wages at the moment, I'd suggest.
So you can't actually do reduced wages unless it's by agreement legally. So
Watch this space.
Yeah. So if you are on reduced hours, you can only have reduced hours during the JobKeeper period. So you can't, unless if you're permanent and you have a contract of employment. If you're casual, obviously they can decide what your hours are whenever. If your employer reduced your wages and you had to sign a new agreement, that can kind of continue for the period of which that was set. But in most cases, you can't actually reduce wages, and so there's some good stuff on Fair Work about that. JobKeeper, when it ends, you have to return to your full hours if you're being stood down, or your role, if the business can't afford you anymore, would be made redundant. Is that answering? Because there's heaps in that question.
Yeah, I would say go to Fair Work website. And I know Fair Work, like, you can call them and I'm sure you can get some information specific to your role. I mean, if you're a casual employee, all bets are off anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
And whatever you find, talk to your employer, giving them the benefit of the doubt in the first instance to begin with.
Yeah, and I might finish on this last question, and then we might give some final thoughts. Suggestions for referees when not confident about your past employers. So maybe you work for a scumbag or three and you know that they can't string two words together or are not nice people. So I guess my question to both of you would be, if this person, like, could it say, hey, let's chat about referees. I don't have good ones and I can explain why. How would you handle that?
By the time you get to the point in the recruitment process where they're going to be checking referees, I'm talking to typical, you're at the pointy end, so they're either splitting hairs between you and one other candidate, or you're the preferred candidate and they're just doing final checks. So you absolutely want your referees to be strong. You need to know well before that point what your options are, because you need to keep the process moving really quickly and be ready to go. But absolutely, if you were at that point and you didn't have a traditional referee as far as your previous employer or current employer, then you should open up a conversation with that recruiter that says, look, this is my situation. Would you be comfortable if I provided you with these two referees? Here's the relationship that I have to them. And try and find people that maybe they haven't been your boss, but they've been somebody more senior than you that can vouch for your employment. So if the owner of the business was a scumbag, as Glenn said, maybe there was someone else off to the side that's still more senior than you. Also think about if you have held a volunteer position or a committee position or something where there was maybe a chair of the board, could that person from that volunteer or that role that's an extracurricular we keep talking about, there's another bonus to having an extracurricular, maybe they could be a referee for you. I'd look for those. Unfortunately, a personal reference, so a character reference, it's pretty outdated, and I don't know anyone that would accept a personal reference or a character reference at this stage.
And I mean, could you, like, if you're not in that role anymore, maybe it is you have to call someone in your other team and say, hey, like, I know I don't work there anymore, but is there a chance, like, just to prep them a bit? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's hopefully not too many people end up in this situation, but certainly maybe there's somebody that left the business.
Yeah.
So they might have also felt like the boss was a scumbag and they're not there anymore, and you can reach out to them and they can be your referee from when they did work with you.
Yeah, no worries. And one last question for Shell. You don't have to answer this. There's a question in there about master's degrees.
Good old master's degree, hey? What, do they write anything specific, or whether you should just do it?
I was scrolling and I saw it.
Yeah, so I think when you do your masters, it's a lot of money. So,
yeah. Is it worth to go get a master's degree to level up in your career and climb the ladder?
Yeah, well, we were talking, and we've got an episode coming out with one of the lecturers from RMIT where we actually talk about going forward. It's really, your bachelor is just kind of your
hygiene.
Your hygiene. You have to have it to get in the door, so more people will have that degree. For a master's, I think you really need to know if you're going to be in that long enough to make it valuable. So if I was doing my time again, I wouldn't have done HR, I would have done it in just an MBA because it was more general. So do something general enough that it can work across industry.
Well, we might leave it there. Before we go, you did touch on what's coming up. What's coming up on the My Millennial Career podcast?
Yeah, so we just did a lot of recording last week, didn't we?
We did a huge amount of recording.
So we have an episode coming out with Dave Pick, who is the CEO of Institute of Management and Managers and Leaders, and he's talking about how you get to move into management and leadership, which is going to be great for anyone wanting to take that step. We've got Dr. Julian Waters-Lynch, who's coming on and talking about future of work. And
quite a different perspective on future of work, though. I think anti-robots, anti-AI, as far as, not him, but it's when we say future of work, we didn't really spend much time at all talking about robots stealing our jobs. It was like,
so future-proofing your career, really, and what else we've got? Wellbeing.
So, we've got wellbeing. The other one that we had a tradie that's gone to uni at the age of 30, which I loved, and it made me think of Jay. So we're going to be talking to a guy by the name of Jay who was a builder, so a tradie, and he now runs a consultancy that works with builders in order to maximise their performance and profit. So talking to him about making that move from being an employee, and in particular a very practical hands-on one, to being a business owner.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. So thank you so much, Shell and Em. And if you want to write anything live to Shell and Em, put in the webinar chat now, and I'll show them when it ends. But thank you so much, Shell and Em, for your time tonight. I had a look. We've got a 9 out of a 10 average stars from the reviews that have come in. So it's been well received. Zoe said, have you dyed your hair, Shelley?
I have.
Looks
Thanks,
lovely.
Zoe. It's darker. It's because of COVID and not wanting to go to the hairdresser very often.
Oh, is that the trick?
It's just a trick.
So, and Em...
What?
No, sorry. Zoe, what are you doing to me? Em, your hair is also great. Glenn, you're luscious as per normal.
And Glenn, your hair's great too.
I'm going to the hairdressers this weekend, so watch this space.
Love it. And there's a lot of things coming in.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
So nice.
You have honestly helped me so much. I'm so grateful for this webinar. I hope there is more to come. Thanks so much, guys. Such a helpful webinar and podcast. Thank you, Glenn, your usual self. Your usual buttons. Sorry, it's I can't read it because the Windows cut it out. Glenn, for your usual butt-ins. Thank you for your usual butt-ins.
Oh, yeah, good.
I thought it was going to be thank you for your usual butt.
Yeah. So there is so much. I'll show the girls after, but thank you, everyone. And I'm going to turn it off now, but yeah.
Thanks for hanging out.
See ya.
And we'll send you the link for the replay very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.